part, that's where I.
It works.
Recording in progress. Let's go to this. Alright. You're live, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, we will begin with that. Welcome, everyone that's here, July 13th, regular city council meeting, 7 p.m. Everybody is present and accounted for. It's supposed to be. We will begin with the prayer or thought by Dave Johnson, followed by the pledge.
Dear Father in heaven, we are grateful to be here this evening. Grateful to meet as public officials and staff and public to discuss the needs of the city and determine what's best. We pray that thy Spirit will be with us to be wise and good stewards of the tax funding of our residents and the privilege that we have to serve. And we pray that thou will be with us in these things we ask in the name of Jesus Christ.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mayor, just real quick.
Yes.
For some reason, there's some glitch with it streaming on YouTube, but we are recording, so it should be good. I'll try to work on the glitch while we're waiting.
Okay. We're good with that. Does council have occasion to review the agenda in the minutes? Any corrections, comments?
I'll make a motion that we approve the agenda for tonight's meeting and consent agenda and the meeting minutes from the council meeting June 22nd, 2021.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Bowers and Thurston. Okay. Anything on the declaration, specific declaration of conflict on tonight's meeting? Anyone? See none. Is there anybody in attendance tonight that would like to address council on any issue that's not on the agenda? Come on, Alvin, you're running out of chances. Maybe in December. Okay, so on to reports, mayor has none. Need from council. Pretty quiet. I'm gonna get around to repair my boat tonight.
Oh, don't jinx
Yeah,
Hey, well, it's up to you. It's your
I have a couple brief things. So the Grayson storage property that was going to be on the agenda, I was telling Councilmember Bowers a little bit about this. There needed to be adjustment with the plat. So there were two properties that were listed as part of the potential disconnect, and should only had one. And then also talking to our city attorney, even though the state law doesn't explicitly say it needs to go before the planning commission, because it's an appendage of the general plan, it therefore by default needs to go before the planning commission. So our goal is to get it before the planning commission in this upcoming meeting, the 1st of August, and then from there do our 3 weeks of public noticing for a public hearing before the council will do business signing at the same time and everything. So that's the explanation behind that. There is need for closed session.
sorry, it's not on the agenda, so I don't even know if we can discuss it, but I better wait. I just feel like it needs to get done.
Yeah, we're
It
moving.
legally has to go before.
Yes. The general plan because it's a land use issue and annexation boundaries, which is part of the city's general.
I mean, not that I want to not include the planning commission, but he's been, waiting for a long time, and I realize a lot of this is his fault, and he realizes that too, but I don't want to make it, he's sitting over there, and we're all sitting over there with the unit that can't even be used, and he's got money, and he's got a loan on hold that won't move forward without this getting done. So
We've talked about that. So we're moving this. I mean, I personally wrote the public notice for him when it's his responsibility per se to do that, and I'm going to help him do it on public notice it on the state website. I'm gonna help him with more because there were a couple little things overlooked as well. on his part, but that, I'm not trying to point the finger necessarily, I'm just saying we gotta make sure we check all these boxes, cross all the Ts, dot all the Is, so.
He did say that he had 2 pieces of property, and so we're saying, we're forcing him to only be annex 1 of those pieces?
No, it's his decision.
Okay,
So honestly, and we'll get into that, but because this is just a report,
right,
honestly, from, I think, just de-annexing, disconnecting from a short-term temporary fix from his perspective is the quickest, easiest solution, it makes the most sense. But from a long-term city planning perspective, I wouldn't recommend it as a staff member from a long-term planning perspective. Hopefully you can understand kind of that dual recommendation. I agree it is the quickest, easiest fix, which is why I told him this is an option you can do to do that. But we'll talk about that on that evening when it comes before the council too. So, but I'm trying to push it through as fast as we can based on state code requirements. We can't move it any faster. So, and the reason why is because city boundaries and land use is a big deal, and the state law is so strict because they want the public to have sufficient time to be able to have a say if city boundaries are being changed.
yeah, and I support that, we just need to get the 3 weeks notice
Yeah.
so that we can
When is
have a
it?
meeting to make a decision, so he knows what he has to do and not do.
Him and I called and talked to him
And the
today
city
to
council
see.
can override the planning commission, that's the part I don't fully understand.
You can, that's true, they're an advisory body, but what it is it's part of the process.
Giving the public that notice, right?
Right, and
We have to 3 weeks notice it anyway, but now he's saying it has to go before the planning commission and then be 3 weeks notice.
yeah, because it was 3 weeks notice for its day and there, but we had to cancel it based on the variety of things that I mentioned, and so.
When's the soonest it can come out?
That first week of, September. The first,
Meeting in August?
September.
You can't get it that second meeting.
I have to look at the timing.
The planning commission doesn't meet till the second Thursday of the month in August.
So what I need to double check with the city attorney is, we could do it the second week in August if the planning commission meeting can be held while the public notice for the public hearing, which I think is possible.
Which
So I
would
just
make
want to
sense.
verify that. But
Yeah,
does that sound right to you, Brett? That the public hearing noticing can be going on even before it goes to the planning commission, right?
I don't think there would be a problem with that.
Yeah, and that's
so
my
let's shoot
thought
for that
too,
second
so-
meeting in August then.
Yeah,
First meeting in August, second week in August, right?
Well,
The first
the
meeting?
first week, they don't meet till the second Thursday,
yeah.
Usually after this first.
still.
So, I mean, we could, I'll look at the timing. If we can get it even in the first week of August, I'll do that. So, but I'll look at the timing, so.
Sounds great, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. There is need for closed session tonight, I believe. When council members had an item, and then I've got 3 very brief things to just more to brief you on than anything. And then lastly, the county clerk resigned, and so I got an interesting email from the county manager saying we need to update our contract about elections, or here's a contract. And I said, well, you already have a contract in place. Long story short, even though Jeremy before me brought the contract before you guys, he signed it, he sent it to the county clerk's office. It was never executed or even recorded with the county, never went before the county commission. I kind of threw a little bit of stink about that, and we were the only city out of the cities that they have contracts with or had contracts with that had any record of our contract. And because we had record of not only signing it, but emailing it for the county to ratify, which they never did, he said, we can do the new contract and we'll honor the prior cost, or I'll just ratify the old contract as is. And I said, please just ratify it as is. Next year, we'll talk about doing a new contract. So unless he gets any kind of pushback from the county commission, which I doubt, where he's just gonna ratify it, we're gonna move forward. So just wanted to make you aware of that scenario. They're still doing everything. I've been in touch with the county clerk's office on just things with the elections. The sample ballot was just sent to me and for the primary, and the ballots should already start being in the mail for the primary to our residents. So, I think that was all my, let me make sure.
Pastor what? They called and asked me to.
That's all I have for now. There's another item that I'll discuss when you talk about the sprinkler system situation. So that's all I've got.
Okay. Moving on to staff reports, accounts payable, Kim Palmer.
The invoice register is
Sorry,
in
can
there.
I just make a quick comment? The report that we're supposed to keep, have in here so we can ask for follow-up on them are not in here.
Oh, the updated spreadsheet. I think that was just an oversight. It didn't get put in here, but it was updated. So, well, I can email you a copy of that after the
Great,
meeting.
thank
So,
you.
thank you for noting that.
Do you have any questions regarding the payables in there, the invoice register?
I have none. Pretty standard. Pratt here?
So Pratt had a family vacation scheduled for a while, so if there's any specific questions on his items, I'm happy to respond or get answers from him after he
So
returns.
visitor center RFP, we're sending that out to see what responses we get.
Yeah, he's putting it together to send it out. CNHA, of course, would be required to submit a proposal as in addition to anyone that's potentially interested.
And the way I understand it is what it looked like in the email is he wants us to give feedback based off this.
Yeah, is there any feedback of things you feel need to be included in what we want out of a concessionaire in the visitor center? So, are there certain items that you're like, man, we should be selling that, or whatever the case is, but.
I don't know that we, as city council, should decide that. I think that the visitor center staff has a better idea of what needs to be sold, and that's why I do like under scope of agreement number 1, where it says the parties agree that Blanding City may sell non-competing items that different products, because visitor center staff understand who comes to the visitor center and what they want to buy. And so I think that that's good. And then I also like that it says in there that we reserve the right to remove anything that we think doesn't fit with our, I can't remember what that was. Yeah.
Number 6.
But I like that. I think it's important that we reserve that right.
Yeah, and Pratt obviously works really closely with our visitor center staff. I think he's taken their opinions into consideration. Although on that note of that one, him and I might chat a little bit. We may need to, well, first of all, we'll probably want Kendall to just review it, and we may need to define what that philosophy or policy is.
Okay.
We need to have a little more information on that, but.
And that was gonna be my next question, if Kendall has reviewed it yet, and it sounds like he hasn't, probably pending us maybe
Getting
making some
feedback.
suggestions and
Yeah.
things, but
Exactly.
that would be my concern, is that we make sure that we can legally have the things that we want,
Yeah. Okay.
okay?
Any other comments on that? I think, and that's the one thing I noticed in there, we say that it needs to be in accordance with our philosophy and policy, but we need to clarify exactly what the
What
scope of that is, so we can compare products to that and see if it fits, and so that needs to be in writing.
Right.
I like the direction it's going. Okay, 4th of July recap, who wants to talk about that? That was awesome. That's my input.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I turn the time over to the esteemed Mr. Jerk.
I don't know, it's become a well-oiled machine. And Pratt did a tremendous job putting that together and seeing it through. I've received lots of praise, lots of thanks for what went on. The only thing I've heard, many of you guys have heard too, people wishing we'd have music, well, maybe next year you do music, But you can't make everyone happy, but
I surprisingly really enjoyed it more without, as I was making that comparison, I like to hear the crowd, so I really enjoyed it.
well, my thoughts were, when you sit there as a kid, they're interested in what's going on up there, and music. But I think it was a good thing. The band was great, the parade was great. I received lots of emails, text messages from people that were just really impressed with it and glad to hear it to do that. And so I say kudos to Pratt and the staff here at the city that put together an awesome 4th of July. You know, I went to the dive-in for dollars, managing at the gate there, and kids just had a blast. You know, I stayed at the stage as the fireworks started, getting ready to go. So with my family and 2 little girls come up to me crying, Mr. Turk, we're lost, we're scared. And so I sat and watched the fireworks with them at the stage so we could find their mom, you know, but that's what landing is. And it was just a good thing. And so, and I've talked to Logan about this, you know, the way we have done this is I've given, like, if you look here at Mark and Carrie, they've done 2 of these for us. And then they choose their successor to do 2 years, and it'll be Nikki Stafford will be taking over. And that just keeps it fresh and gives people in the community a chance to participate. So it was awesome. So
Well,
staff, you did really good.
I say
I
thanks
did
to
really
you
good.
too and to Valerie.
Yeah.
And I know
Hey,
that you spent a lot.
We got to pick up trash on Sunday, and I was hoping it'd push into church time, but it didn't.
We made money. Remember,
Always
we made
next
money.
year. Huh?
And we did make some money
Yeah, I
that way.
made what we found 37 cents, but it's fine, 36. We beat you by a couple. But it was a good thing. No, it's a good thing for our community. So,
Do we have an estimate for numbers with Pratt? Trying to figure that out.
I don't know that he ever could.
I talked to a couple of the officers that are always roaming around. I thought it was somewhat above average numbers in the, as the farm, as the booths and everything were opened up, and then maybe about average of the fireworks. The
That's
parade
because
route
they
didn't
were all
didn't
lined
look
up down
bigger,
the
but there were
highway.
way more cars in the first 2 blocks off Main Street than I ever remember, but I didn't see a corresponding with people. Didn't feel that way driving through the, good crowds on this day.
it was good. The city needed it. The people needed it. Good job, Lynn.
Any other comments?
Yeah, I thought it was excellent. I would like to hear patriotic music. I heard a rumor that someone paid to not have music, is that
That's
true?
not true.
Okay. So, but I think someone was, people were comparing it to the October celebration, which was not patriotic music, and I personally didn't love the music there. But I think patriotic music is makes it almost feel like you're at a paid event. I think it's important for me personally. And then I think we should look at the location of the vendors in the park and see if we can find a way to make, I think we saw only about maybe 15% of the people at the northern vendors rather than, you know, everybody kind of avoids the northern vendors, and I think there should be a way to get them down where they're a little closer to the food. But it was fabulous, and I thought there was more people at the fireworks than normal, but I thought the playground route was light. So that was my take. So good, so good. Great job.
I figured out why we had extra candy, because Mayor was driving and Councilmember Turk was
Talking.
talking. And so we had extra boxes that would have been their boxes.
I told you, it's a box and a half of a block. When you're
Yeah.
halfway
Oh, I
through,
did
you
hear that.
we just-
Without you guys, for real.
Next morning, my heart
Why?
My
This is
family
why.
couldn't hear you. We never heard any, they never heard anything you said, and then everybody said that the first 2 vehicles went way too fast.
No, the third vehicle.
Went way too
There you go.
slow.
We were 3 blocks down before they
The
even
other one
moved.
started,
at all.
yeah. We were,
They should have just bypassed them and filled the gap.
It was
They didn't.
awesome.
They sat there and waited forever. And I was like, well, you know, the guys are walking. I kept letting them get further ahead and trying to, yeah.
we were panicking.
It was 3.5 blocks.
All I remember
On an
is
8-block
some
parade.
patriotic hippie running around the parade and in the park during the fireworks wearing some bandana. And,
That's all you remember the whole thing?
yeah, that's all I remember is this patriotic hippie. He was hanging out with all the council members. I couldn't figure out who he
Oh, the
was.
guy in the onesie?
Yeah.
Oh,
I'll pass that on to you next year.
I've heard that thing actually.
Grandpa, yeah.
But the music that one person who talked about that, the music they like is that John Phillips's patriotic music, and they like it choreographed to the fireworks.
I forgot the actual fireworks and the music, and I bet that's where a lot of that came from.
Yeah, that
It's
music
just,
was great, kind of crazy.
because I forgot, I mean, I didn't forget about that we did it, I just forgot. I guess I just assumed.
Anyways, I think it's good.
I think the fireworks were phenomenal.
Yeah, it should be great.
And I loved all the low fireworks. I think that made it really exciting, especially for people that were in the park.
That was my kid's favorite, was the little one.
It's really good.
We had 3 families by us that came over from watch our fireworks.
I'll have to mention that to Mary House, because she said, I'm gonna compete with your event this year, and I just said,
They did fireworks.
good luck with
But
that.
they-
So, side note, I don't know if you guys noticed, but several of the vendors were just running out of food, like well before.
And the lines were
done. Yeah, which to me is usually an indicator on.
I agree with Cheryl's point on those distant vendors, that maybe we wrap them around the front of the field, so there's room to have the lines in both of them, but get them in the tighter group, I don't know. Look
I
at
think
that.
we've done it different ways, and I think that's probably one thing that maybe.
Because it just stretches out so far, because there's so many in the crowd, just naturally dissipates in that direction.
Yeah, we definitely saw a very low volume of the actual visitors up there. So I think there's a better way to do it, but I agree, it needs to be looked at and figure out a way.
The other thing to point out is just a great work Nikki Safford did on the lawn, with the American flag. It was very awesome. I got to be her lowly assistant, filling in the gaps, but she did an awesome job.
Very
Well, that all started as a dare, I dare telling you to do something on that bill. But there's so many photo ops taken of that flag, families sitting there, children on it. And so,
I don't know, it felt weird during the concert when people started sitting on it.
yeah.
Anyway,
Put a barrier around it.
I'd get the same band again, and I would ask them to step the sound up one level, so that it projects. When I talked to them about it, if they were to come back, they need to have some speakers on stands.
When they're playing Paradise City, the mayor wants to
He
give them
wants
rock.
I thought they're, they say code, they're mostly ladies, and I thought, it'll be okay, but every song they play on it, that's a good one. That's good. That'll do well. And they get-
To give you flashbacks.
Where were they from?
They're just Salt Lake, yeah.
And the lead singer was the same lead singer we had last year, so he must be in a couple bands.
Oh, is it?
He's been here in 3 different bands.
Oh, really?
The guy
Like, seen him by name.
It says Utah Live Band.
So it's a lot of fun. It's a big deal. Okay, moving on, water reports.
Give us some good news, Terry.
Good news, I've got good news.
Mhm.
We conserved 7%, our culinary customers anyway, from last June to this June.
Well, we had pipeline flow in excess of what we treated, according to this. That seems like that can't be right.
Oh, that can for June.
Really?
Yeah. It won't be that way next month.
Okay. I'll take your word for it. David's word for it, whoever's word that is.
I can have David double check, but I think it's that's good. I mean, that's all the good news I have, so. Are there any questions?
I told Katie we're not leaving till it rains tonight.
Yeah. It's because you're not mine.
I'm gonna piggyback on the water report and say that I've been talking with the USDA Rural Development Grants. We're gonna apply for the emergency, whatever ECWAG stands for, Emergency Community
Water Assistance Grant.
Yeah, they basically, if we are doing a project that is specifically a water source, they'll grant up to $1 million. In our project, it could be up to 1.5, it could be as low as 900. So we're gonna apply for that. So I've just been playing phone tag for a few weeks with them and left a message with the main contact. So just making aware that was on the update. I'll email you.
Okay. Rec report, I don't see Dave Palmer here.
He, had a family, medical thing that he was attending to, so told me if you had any questions, I would let him know.
Well, I know, when it's drought, I seem like it is more often than not, my philosophy is a brown splotchy lawn is a beautiful thing, and less of it, probably. I know a lot of people are cutting back on lawn they actually have. I'm cutting mine back about 30%. I've done it at work, I've done it at home. But we try to get that centennial field so it will survive the 4th, and then it needs a little bit to recover, and then we need to pull it back and put it in survival mode like everyone else is doing.
Yes,
This
that was,
water issue is really getting serious.
so that was the plan, is they were watering it up to the 4th of July event to ensure that the turf could handle the traffic, and then cut it back after the 4th of July.
Well, okay, what else we got on rec then to report, other than we can see what we're seeing? Anybody have questions for staff on? Okay, hearing none, moving ahead, police, Chief Bradford.
Mayor and Council, for June, we were just staying part of the course, we're up every month over last year at the same time, so I do want to publicly thank the San Juan County Sheriff's Office and the Metro Patrol for helping with the parade and everything, we can't do it without them. There's lots of intersections and stuff to be taken care of, and they always graciously accept the offer to help. And then we had, I think for the first time, we actually had to do traffic control to get people into the park because it was so busy after the parade. It took about a half hour to get people in. The parking lane on the side of the highway filling up with people trying to turn in, and people from the right-hand lane trying to turn in as well. So it was very busy. And I'd like to thank the public for being careful with fireworks and things. We didn't have any firework related calls that night that I'm aware of.
It was kind of sad to not see them and hear them all over town, because that's a lot of the excitement. But it kind of made me happy.
I saw a couple right before I saw
them too. I've just been so nervous. So
Like about that. So.
But it showed that the public took seriously what we were putting out there. Come to the city's fireworks show. We know it's due.
Other than that, do you have any questions on our?
Well, I'll just one comment. I do get feedback often on it. People are like, man, I always see people getting pulled over. We look like a speed trap. I just say, I ride with the officers periodically. They're not stopping anyone until 10 or 12 over. And they dang well better be stopping them. So we're not a speed trap.
People are calling for it.
People are driving too dang fast.
They do.
I love it when I see you.
Well, I do too, because I know what the bar is generally, and the bar, it depends on the behavior of the driver too. So I think the guys make good judgment calls on this, and we're not running a fundraiser here. I think the guys are spot on what they're doing.
Yeah.
So
if you get complaints, I would entertain a ride along with some of those people for a couple hours if they wanted to see what.
yeah, I'll mention that.
I'll make sure to come sit on Main Street and just watch for a little while.
Yeah.
Right across Main Street.
People are hauling.
They may want to hold the radar gun.
Okay, thanks, Chief.
Great job on the 4th of July.
I agree.
Because I parked in that dirt parking. I thought it was going to take me forever to get out. It was so smooth, better than any concert I went to, and had to park a mile out.
Yeah.
You guys did a great job.
Pass that along.
Okay. Moving ahead, Harriet or CLPP.
Okay, Mayor and
What do we
Council,
got that's new on this?
this could be discussion as much as report, because that's kind of long, but, while Dave's pulling up the slides, we had a PSNE plan review.
A what?
PSNE, I don't know what that
Okay, fine.
I'm totally
Acronym?
shifting gears on the UDOT project.
Okay.
So anyway, the preliminary plans are done, and those things are about ready to go to bid for the signage
Okay.
at Center and Main, and then for our school crossing. I would guess our school crossing probably, I wouldn't think it's gonna be done in time for school to start, but hopefully soon thereafter. And, they're spending an extra like 25,000 just so our crossing guard ways to flip one switch and lights go on both sides.
Wow.
I mean, it's pretty expensive to get that interconnect, between the two signs, because they're about 1,000 feet apart.
You
on
used
the
to
opposite
call
side.
us and have us go out and turn on or off the south.
They used to call you.
It doesn't work that way anymore. Many locations, so.
Yeah. Okay, I've got a little presentation on carbon-free power project. Let's go to the next slide. Do a little history on this thing, and we'll talk about why we're having this discussion a little bit further along. Depending on how fast we want things to go, you probably just ask questions as we go. If you wait till the end, you might forget your question, but half of them I'll probably answer as we go, so I don't know. The carbon-free power project is a small modular reactor project using NuScale technology. The project will be 6 reactors, each of them with an output capacity of 77 megawatts for a total of 462, and will be located at the Idaho National Laboratory site near Idaho Falls. Blanding currently has 2.012 megawatts capacity allocation. With our growth rates, future needs may be higher, and we're evaluating that. The target commercial date will be 2029, and that would be just for one of the reactors, and the following would all come in 2030. The project price is $58 per megawatt hour, and that's $20. And the long-term resource would be starting in 2029, and the way these nuclear projects work, you get licensed from the NRC for 40 years with a possible extension for 20 more. Let's go to the next one. So we had a big discussion, Councilmember Nelson, back in October that you probably missed. And so this presentation will be kind of an update on what's happened since then. And I've got 3 slides talking about that. This first one just talks about the agreements that have been signed since October. The Department of Energy, the cost sharing agreement, the $1.4 billion that they have allocated to this project, that agreement has been signed since October. And then the development cost reimbursement agreement, that we call that the DICRA, and that is an agreement between UAMPS and NuScale. And that mostly has to do with the technology. So NuScale is the developer and producer of the small modular reactor. And then the EPC agreement, the engineering, procurement, construction, that's an agreement between UAMPS and Fluor. Fluor is the contractor who would construct the power plant. So that agreement has also been signed. And I guess I did mention the reimbursement. Well, the reimbursement agreement, that's the one that helps us get reimbursed on a project if the project doesn't happen. So let's go to the next slide. NuScale is uprated the power output from 60 megawatts to 77. I kind of mentioned that, but that is new since October. We were looking originally at doing the 12 module plant, and then we considered 8, and that has been set now by the project management committee to be 6. So no longer will it be 12 or 8. Those options are no longer being considered. This lower overall output will make subscription easier to achieve, and the overall project schedule remains the same, 2029 and 2030. Let's go to the next one. So the costs a little bit have changed, and going from the 12 or 8 down to the 6, it's just not a linear decrease in cost. The combined licensing application is the same. And then some of the cranes, reactors, and all of that, there's costs that you just have to have for a nuclear plant, whether you have 6 or 12. And so that's kind of why we're having this discussion tonight, because some of those are owner costs, and owner being UAMPS, Blanding City, plays a role in that, because we're part owners. And so that's increased our price target from $55 per megawatt hour to 58. And, you know, as you know, we have our economic competitive tests along the way on this project. And if the project ever exceeds that dollar figure per megawatt hour, we can leave the project and not be responsible for any of the costs. But because those are owner costs, that triggered, we still have that agreement, but the cost is now 58 instead of 55.
So and then maybe you have an idea from some of these discussions, what's an average cost per megawatt hour for solar or wind?
Okay, for solar wind, right now we're as high as almost $90 a megawatt hour on our
Naysayers, this
Horseshoe wind.
project named the potential high cost as one of their great fears, and it's a political ploy, because they favor solar and wind at twice the price.
Right.
So
What's
it's
the,
not a sincere opposition.
what's the price, is the 50, what's the price point where you said where you can back out at a no cost?
If it's more than 58.
It is 50, and we're at 57, right?
But
No.
now we've gone up 3.
So it was a 55, it was moved to 58.
Yes, it was 55 with the 12 or the 8, and we hope to stay there, and we have not stayed there. That's 58 with these additional costs.
So what's the chances of that going, well, maybe we need to go 65? I mean, is there?
It could happen.
Is that-
But I don't think we expect that to happen because we're getting those owner costs. And I'll talk about that a little more as we go, I think on the next couple of slides. But let's finish this one. Hold on, Dave. So I just wanted to go over the last two bullets. The price is still very attractive comparing other potential carbon-free resources that are dispatchable. And I just want to remind everyone, dispatchable means if we need it, we can turn it on. We can't make the wind blow, so wind isn't dispatchable power. Same with the sun, we can't make it shine. And so, you know, solar is not a dispatchable product. It has to be something like green hydrogen, batteries, you know, which are pretty expensive and a tougher technology. And then I threw in our current average cost is around 57. I looked back up on one of Jeremy's old slide presentations and it said 57.5. I didn't go back and recalculate it. I just took that one from memory. We paid so many different prices based on time of day, which source we're buying, and so it takes a lot to come up with that number. And I think you could make it look like anything you wanted, so I just used Jeremy's.
I got a question. What percentage of our power will we getting from this?
62.
62%.
Yeah, and that's probably a little higher than we would want from any one resource. And we can talk about that a little bit further down. That's okay. So the development cost reimbursement agreement provides for 100% reimbursement to the project participants if there's a failure of the economic competitive test of $58 per megawatt hour through the combined licensing application development phase of the project. So that's January 2024. And by the time we get to January 2024, we'll have a class 2 estimate, which is the best estimate you can have. You know, class 1 is just, you bid it out. You have a hard contracted price. And so as we keep moving towards January of 2024, we'll get better cost estimates. Right now, we're at class 4 level estimate, and that's part of what's put us into this $58 per megawatt hour. Let's go to the next slide.
Well, so, Mayor asked the question, I think, but if that keeps changing, so we're at 55, now we're at 58, I mean, at what point does that really just not?
Is there a guarantee if they can just keep raising it?
Yeah.
So I wonder what obstruction there to.
We, being the project management committee, raised it, right? So the UAMPS Carbon-Free Power Project Board. And so we have control to some extent with our other project participants on that. And what caused that price change was going from the 12-pack to the 6-pack.
Okay.
And so we don't anticipate some
So that's the answer I was looking for, is that seem, because we went to a different plateau because of the different size.
Yes.
And now feeling a little better. about
And so
that.
the project really would, I mean, we can't change that now. And we passed that opportunity, and so the project would just die before we would change that again, is my understanding. So on de-risking, this is just some bullets to kind of talk through what UAMPS has done to de-risk the project to the greatest extent practicable. So the DOE cost share funds, the $1.4 billion, those are kind of front-loaded from now through January of 2024. So we'll spend a higher percentage of Department of Energy's money now in 2022, and then we'll spend more of our money as we get to 2024, so to speak. And so that's one of the ways we've decreased risk. The UAMPS participants portion of the combined licensing application development costs of $309 million is $67 million through January of 2024. So by strategically structuring the DOE and NuScale cost share funds. So we expect to spend $309 million from now till January of 2024 on the combined licensing application. And so remember, the combined licensing application, that's a submittal that goes to the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. And it's a fully designed project, and then you take that application to get that approved by the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, which could take up to 2 years. And that fits in our 2029 schedule, so we'd be going from 2024 to around 2026 to get that approval. And then construction would go from 2026 to 2029. And so of the 309, we're responsible for 67 million of that. And we being all of the participants in the carbon-free power project. And the DOE funds are subject to appropriations. So there's some risk there. However, there's strong support from both parties as well as both houses of Congress. So we could always have a hiccup with the federal funding, since those are appropriations. The development cost reimbursement agreement has reimbursement provisions of 100% if the target energy cost of $58 per megawatt hour is not met. And then as the project progresses, higher levels of cost estimate confidence will be achieved. We'll go from class 4 to class 3 to class 2. And we'll reduce the risk because we'll have the construction and operations costs nailed down better. The project management committee, PMC, directs the project. The budget and status of the project will be reviewed on a monthly basis, and there will be multiple economic competitive test runs. And then no payment from the utilities until the commercial operation of the plant, unless a participant withdraws or UAMPS cancels the project without a target price test failure. Questions on that? Okay, let's go to the next one. So the subscription status, and this is the one that we wish we were further along on. So 28 UAMPS members have signed power service contracts for a total of 103 megawatts subscription. One Washington utility has signed a letter of intent that they will sign a contract for 150 megawatts. So that contract's being worked through. And then one Arizona utility has also signed a letter of intent for 25 megawatts. 7 other utilities are working on letters of intent. So based on all the people who said, yeah, we want this power, we're oversubscribed because the plant only has a capacity of 462. In reality, we don't have all of that. So Beaver they left the project last fall. They're back in now. Their council has decided they do want to participate in the project.
And that cost them, didn't they abandon some abandoned?
Well, it would be the same as if we abandoned, if we opted to leave the project, you have like a year. And so they didn't actually
So you can
pay
still buy in
anything.
where you left.
Mm-hmm. It sounds, go ahead.
How will they determine who actually falls within what we have if we're short? Who are they gonna kick out first?
I think it's first come, first serve. I think it's whoever gets in there, and the last one to get in may not get everything they want if it's not available, and then everyone else.
So because we're within the UAMPS members, we're in the contract, so we're good.
We are good. But if we did want to increase our allocation, we'd need to do that sooner than later. And it sounds like, I guess I could talk about this as easy right now as anywhere. I'm not sure where I have it in the slides. So what's kind of triggering this right now is that change from 55 to 58 because the project management committee has finally determined it will be 6 modules. And some of the cities right now, our resolution that we did in October, if you remember, well, let's go to the next slide, Dave. I think it's probably right there. It's actually probably on the next one. Let's just hold off on that. Let's go through this one. Let's go back to, or I'll forget something. Yeah. Okay, yeah, perfect. So the next phase, when I say next phase, I'm talking about the end of this year, starting next year. Okay, so it's the combined licensing application. This approval takes us through, from January 2022 to January 24. We've got additional site study work and engineering design will be completed and cost estimates will be refined, which will continue to reduce the uncertainties of the project. Critical site seismic work will be done this summer. That's happening. As I don't fully understand all this, but the Idaho National Laboratory has to do a certain amount of seismic work just for all of the things that are happening at their facility. And we're jumping on their coattails. And so we moved quickly and so that we could get some of the cost savings associated with doing that combined with them. And we have drillers that will be turned loose to do all the geotechnical core borings. That's happening this summer. And that information will be used, that we have to have that to do the combined licensing application. And then at the end of this year, we'll run an economic competitive test to see if we're at that $58 a megawatt or under. And so that would be an off-ramp for Blanding City at the end of the year. Because we've changed things, we have an off-ramp right now if we chose to do that. And then we've got the class 3 estimate that comes in the 3rd quarter of 2022. And that would have the associated economic competitive test. And then again, 1st quarter of 2024. It'll be there. So those are our off-ramps. UAMPS will be focused on signing up additional participants during that time. If I knew where I was at, I'm not that good. You give me too much credit. And then as additional participants come on, then our cost share goes down, and that's kind of what we'll talk about. When we go to that next slide.
Was that one reason why you would entertain the thought of increasing a little if the cost share goes down, then we maybe leave the same dollars?
Well, it could be, and then just based on the resource that we have, do we want more? And we'll get into that towards the end here. So currently, with just the 103 megawatts that the UAMPS members themselves have subscribed to, our cost share is 1.9572% of the total project, or $1.3 million. So now that's through January 2024, not December of this year. And then at full subscription, which we've got to get to full subscription to keep this project moving, our cost share for the same amount of power that we have allocated to us now is 0.435%, or $294,486. So if no one else signed up for the project and we freaked out next March and said we want out, then that would cost us $1.3 million to get out if no one else signed up. But I mean, we don't expect that. We expect that all these other entities will come into the project And then if for some reason we wanted out, it would be the 294,486. And, you know, of course, if the project doesn't pass the economic competitive test at any point, you know, we have no risk as far as money. We don't have to pay anything on that. And so all these amounts are included in the $58 per megawatt hour. You know, once we get to the combined licensing application and that gets approved, you know, the project is funded with debt, and then we just pay for our power as we use it. And then it includes, you know, operations costs, construction costs, decommissioning costs, you know, tearing the plant down, all of that. So the percent amount and development phase cost commitment may change based on new participation levels. The numbers may fluctuate based on overall project participation. As participants come into the project, our cost share goes down, and that's what you're seeing from the 1.3 million to the 294,486. There will be, I guess I already said, there'll be the multiple ACT runs. And so if the price target of $58 per megawatt is met, why wouldn't the city continue? And if it's not met, then UAMPS and the city would receive 100% reimbursement. So, questions?
So my only question is, so what if all these people don't sign contracts and we're only at 103 megawatts? You know, of power that's been signed and guaranteed for. Does the project end then? I mean, that's what you're saying. If you can't fill 437 megawatts with other users, then does the project end and do we pay anything? I mean, I think you will, but
yeah, we would have.
I don't want to end up paying 1.3 million because you guys can't, because we can't get anyone else to sign on.
That's where our risk is. So that's why we wish that we had more people subscribe.
Right.
And that's the discussion that we're going to have very seriously at the end of this year. You know, right now we have these letters of intent and all of that. Those guys, that has to turn into subscription by the end of the year in order for us to feel confident.
Okay.
But we, you know, because once we hit January and go into this combined licensing application phase, that's when we go. Right now, our current risk, just to get us to that point, did I drop my paper on here? Yes, probably. So we have, if you remember, and I didn't remember this, but we have paid $50,551.38 into the project right now. That's money we've already spent. And our share of the project, based on just the UAMPS members that are in, to get us to the end of this year is $131,186. And so the net that we would still owe, if we wanted to leave the project right now, we would have to pay $80,634.74.
And that's on a power company's property.
Yeah.
So, which is more, one more here.
So our risk really is that there's not enough subscribers.
Yeah.
And then we are taking all that risk.
And
That's the risk.
That's why some of the other systems had dropped down.
Oh.
But if you don't get enough subscribers, will that drive that cost up to where
It fails.
Yeah.
No, it wouldn't change that. We could, I mean, I don't know why we keep continuing if we don't have subscribers. So,
I think the other thing, I mean, UAMPS has been doing this for a while. Like, this isn't their first project. So I'm confident that they're not leading us astray in that sense.
it's similar, I mean, so we really need the project to work because, and we could look, do you want to skip, Dave, to the next slide? Okay, so here's just recommendations. City continues to evaluate all available resource options. You know, I mean, we're kind of doing the Muddy Creek heat recovery project, Still Solar, and Horseshoe Wind project in the second phase, but none of those are dispatchable power. And so we keep looking at the other options that we have. It's more risky to do nothing and leave wholesale power costs to chance. August of last year, had all those fires in California. They blocked out the sun on a lot of solar panels and costs went up. February, we had the polar vortex and gas prices, all those gas wells had problems and they couldn't make power with natural gas and the power prices went up and the gas prices went up. You know, current summer pricing is pretty high. And so all the options have risk due to technology, uncertainties and legislative requirements. You know, when we started this, if I remember right, so don't hold me to this, but the $55 number per megawatt hour, where that magic number came from was the cost to just, if the Carbon Free Power Project fails, we'll just run out, we'll start a natural gas project, UAMPS, and build it. And that's what we could build. That was a pretty solid number where you can build a natural gas project for. We keep getting more and more push on clean energy, clean air. Natural gas isn't that. And so, you know, that's another reason why the shift from 55 to 58 really isn't too scary, because nuclear is clean air. And so I started talking a little bit about the resolution. I'll go back to that. In October of last year, the council approved a resolution that was for up to just a hair under 3.5 megawatts participation in this project with a not to exceed of 2%. And so right now we're at the 1.95 and change on this. And so Blanding City Council does not need to take action right now to move forward. I don't know why we would, because we got the off-ramp at the end of the year. And some of the cities do have to take action because their resolutions were different. And so if the council does want to do something different as far as leaving the project or reducing the amount we're into it, that does have to happen by July 23rd. So if that was something we did want to do, we'd probably have to try to schedule some work session and hammer that out quickly. The new budget and plan of finance goes into effect after approval of the various boards. And so what that means, it sounds like there's a utility in California that has a little chunk that's probably gonna pull the plug right now and pay their money and leave the project. Beaver did come back in, and then the word I'm getting is we expect just between the UAMPS members subscription to go up about 15 megawatt hours. And one of the utilities is apparently talking about reducing their allocation. And so I would suspect we're going to go from about 103 megawatts with just UAMPS to 110 right now. We don't know for sure right where that's going to be. And so the numbers and percents that I've given you can shift a little bit.
So Terry, and maybe you've already done this on this here, but back to Councilman Nelson's question about the percentage or total wattage. I can't remember your exact question, but you mentioned you're going to get
Okay, so Dave, if you want to skip, I think my next slide says questions, and then keep going. I've got a couple of, let's go to that top right. Go back up to the first one you hit. Yeah, okay. So this one is our forecasted load resources from April of next year for a 1 year time period. So the green, that's our San Juan resource, the coal power plant down in New Mexico, and that goes away June. It's the last power we'll get out of that. And so you see it goes away. The light blue is our Colorado River storage, and then Horse Butte Wind, and then the purple on the end down there, that's the Still Solar project that's in the works and will be constructed up in Brigham City, and that will come on then. So you can see, and then the black is our load. And so we've got a pretty big chunk to fill in there, so you guys could add 2 on there is where we're at right now and kind of see where that puts us. Let's go to the next one. I don't have a super good slide. So if you remember in November, we approved a 5-year power purchase, and that starts, I I think it might start next year, even though this slide says 23 to 24. This is just showing our forecast for that calendar year. And so we're buying, this last 5 years, we've just had a solid chunk, and now this one, they've come up with a different agreement, and we pay different prices for the power. On some of the high load times in July, we're paying $90 to $100 a megawatt hour. But then in some of the low load times, maybe in April, we're paying 30, and so that bounces all over the place, and it's working good for us. The risk long-term is that we can't get this 5-year purchase locked in at a price that's acceptable for our customers. And so basically we'd be replacing a lot of that, with the 2 megawatts that we have. You never quite get all of your power, well, San Juan, we never get even close because the power plant shut down at the time, but let's go to the next one, Dave. So these were some slides that you guys saw back in 2018, and this is, right now this is assuming no San Juan, and it just the Horse Butte and the Crisp that we have, and then a 2.5 megawatt allocation on the carbon free. And so you can see we're oversubscribed in spots, and we have to sell
Why is
some.
the IPP dropped off this?
We don't have IPP.
Or what was the purple in the?
It was
Oh, so these slides were done back in 2018 when you guys saw them, and so they don't have the still solar.
The still
That's what
solar.
you've lost. But it's
Just
just,
looking at the color up there and going, okay.
Yeah.
which one was it?
yeah, it's not even on that legend.
Right.
I didn't have any perfect slides for you, so you just get the ones I've got.
So, just to make sure I'm understanding this too, Council, so we're oversubscribed there, but undersubscribed in the.
Well, and you'll always be that way, yeah, in one way or other. So let's go to the next. So this is the 2.5. And so that's exactly what this shows. Surpluses are on the bottom side, and then shortages are above the axis there at 0.
So
And
our shortage is more than the surpluses, I guess, I'm asking that.
oh, are they more? No, they're less. Our shortages are less. Wait, no,
No,
our shortages are more than our surpluses. Now, this is with, see, it's kind of not perfect because this is assuming we had 2.5 megawatts of carbon free. It's not showing still solar, it's not showing Muddy Creek, it's not, which we don't even know if we're building Muddy Creek or Horse Butte 2, that second phase. So let's go to the next one. So that gives you, that's with our current allocation in the carbon free project where we're at now, along with Crisp and Horse Butte. And so we'd be buying a little bit on that 5-year market still if we did this. Now the advantage though, I guess, so it looks like we should probably increase our allocation to 2.5 megawatts.
Mhm.
And the only reason we wouldn't is usually you don't want to get more than like 50% of your load in any one source. I mean, what if, the Yellowstone volcano, whatever, Idaho National Laboratory is pretty close to that, right? I mean, it's going to be a pretty long, anyway, you know what I mean? There's some risk in having all of our eggs in that basket. That's a really, really good basket. We just don't want to have too much in there. And so I think we still have time to discuss that and move our allocation from 2 to 2.5. The other thing that would maybe, how do we feel about growth? How much growth are we going to see in Blanding? How much growth are we going to see? Are we going to get rid of our gas company because it has a carbon footprint? And are we all going to drive electric cars? Oh, man, maybe we ought to get 2.5 megawatts if that's, I don't know. And you have to use your crystal ball a little bit on choosing that resource and that number. What would be really great is if we had the carbon-free power project 2 that was going to be built in Texas or something, and we had a 1.4 billion in DOE money to help us build it, and it was somewhere
I
geographically
think
different.
the subscription for for this, for nuclear, and this one in particular, I'm confident that it'll come through because the political environment out there is to get rid of power production, that everything should run on electricity. Well, that's obviously really stupid. You can't quit producing power and run everything on electricity. And nuclear is the solution. It is the best solution. And that reality is going to express itself over time.
Yeah.
And so I think the subscription will count. So, but I don't know that we want to increase relative to what we're using.
Yeah, because we do have another 1.3 megawatts, 1,300 kilowatts, which is, it kind of puts you more up into here with Muddy Creek, with Steel Solar, and with Horseview 2. You only get that power some of the time and everything, but it balances us out. I think there'll be new projects coming, down the road.
When do we have to decide by?
They want us to decide, soon, but the project's not fully subscribed to. The way we did that resolution was that our UAMPS rep, which is me, can change that allocation up to the 3.4 something, so way more than I would suggest we want to go for. And so I think we could wait a little bit and then say we want more. Probably before the end of the year if it's getting subscribed. So I can watch that subscription as it goes and we can think about it, talk about it more. I would suggest that if the mayor and council feels like we may want to increase that, I would think it would be good to get Doug Hunter, the general manager for UAMPS, in our meeting, either have him come over or have him just join us electronically, and talk really hard about that and see what we think. And I'd be happy to try and get that scheduled for a future council meeting if that's something we'd like to do.
So if we, on those times when we're oversubscribed, we've bought more power than we're using, or we're selling that back on the market.
Yes.
Are there occasions when we don't have buyers and we just bought it and we just bought it? Nowhere to sell it.
I don't know. I don't think so. That's a question we could ask.
And then I wonder, and this is a crystal ball question too. I think the environment for power is going to change quite significantly, and maybe having a little more than we sort of need might actually become a benefit.
Right.
If people are scrambling to find a source and they want it to be green, we'll have it.
If we're okay with the risk of having it all in one spot. Yeah.
And so
I don't know if we have any other option though, with the thing right now.
So if our 62% of our load will be carbon-free project based upon our current subscription.
Yes.
So do you know off the top of your head if we went to 2.5, what the percentage would be?
Yeah, that was 77, I think. And that
It's a
would,
scary high number.
Yeah.
It's way
and keep in mind, those numbers are somewhat elevated because we're not considering Muddy Creek, we're not considering Horseview Phase 2, we're not considering Steel Solar.
So would you say if we consider those, we'd be closer to the 50% mark?
Yeah, I mean, certainly.
And that's about the max of what we want to be at. So one question that I have for you, just maybe I misunderstood this. So clear that here, we talked about we were oversubscribed, right?
Yeah, because the total plant capacity is 462 megawatts.
Right, but then you were saying UAMPS is still looking for more subscribers.
Well,
Because those ones are just,
because we only have 103 megawatts of subscription under contract.
Okay,
Just this Washington utility says they want 150 megawatts, but until we get the power sales contract executed, and their board signed it and approved it, they could say, oh, never mind.
Yeah, because and those were the concerns of those cities
Yeah.
that had pulled out, because these guys hadn't yet fully committed, right?
Well, no, so a lot of that, Mike, there's a tax watchdog group that, was really putting out a lot of information saying that all these nuclear projects fail, and in the bigger cities, they were really pushing that. Your city council is going to approve this project, and it's going to fail because nuclear projects just do that, and your city's gonna have to pay, so in effect, that's a tax. You're paying for your elected officials' blunders. And, they don't fully understand how it works. And, I guess you guys get paid the big bucks to make those hard decisions, but, some of those city councils, I just did not like that pressure. And we're a little bit different because, with San Juan dropping off and everything, we just don't own a lot of resource. And so as long as we make those 5-year contracts work like they're working right now, we probably come out looking pretty good. Our rates are lower than Rocky Mountain Power. We're doing a good job for our customers.
So we
And
feel
that's
all
why
set
you
to get
were-
burned.
That's why you're emphasizing this in red, right?
Yeah. Well, the reason I'm emphasizing that is if we can't buy that power at $58 a megawatt hour, then, this was all a good learning experience and it didn't hurt at all. I mean, the $50,000 we've already paid in is also reimbursable. It's 100%.
That's just what I'm pointing out, just to make sure.
Questions?
Brain's on fire now.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, I'm glad you're the one going to the meetings.
All right.
Okay.
Do you need to bring in
thank
some
you,
grape candy, actually? We've got some extra.
That might help.
Karen. Only if it's old people. All right, moving on, discussion items, youth council, Logan. That's an interesting idea.
Yeah, so at the last ULCT conference, a lot of cities talked about their success with youth council, youth city council. And I've talked to several people and I've met with someone at the school district, and they have given me some names of people that could help maybe organize that and kind of lead that. It'd be super helpful for Sterling Scholar type stuff. I think it would be helpful to just get more involvement in the community, give them some responsibility and a budget and some, give them some things to do and let them do it.
What kinds, I've heard of these, and I've wondered what kinds of things.
They're all different. They're all super unique in what they do. I think that one thing that would be good for them to do here is our help with 4th of July type stuff. I mean,
The one thought I had.
I talked to someone in Washington,
Fall festival.
in Washington, yeah, city of Washington. And they're in charge of all their parades. Any parade that they do, they kind of organize those and make sure that the police are involved and make sure that the groups that are participating in the parades show up. Some of them meet twice a month. Most of them meet once a month. They don't often meet with council, but they try and schedule, one meeting a year where the youth council meets with city council and a joint meeting, and just to get them involved. If this is what they want to do in the future, get them involved now versus later, kind of thing.
So I've had 2 experiences with youth council. One when I was in high school, and 2 managing staff who ran the youth council. The one in high school is the one that I say absolutely was a failure. They basically just brought us in, did a role play for city council, gave us some issue to talk about that we knew nothing about, and pretty much told us what to say. Horrible experience. The staff that I managed that ran youth council did a lot of what Logan's talking about, running. They basically had required volunteer hours that they needed to participate in. We also did an annual there's an annual legislative day for youth council. And so we would take the youth council up there, let them talk to their legislators at the Capitol, just a really good experience for them. There is some of the, and I think this is the case with any kind of volunteer and teenagers, there was some flakiness in some regards. One of the things that we did is we had an adult volunteer, usually with the school, who was our liaison with the youth council. So there was already a good relationship there, also volunteer. But I think what I'm getting at is the key to me for them being successful is giving them substantive things that aren't just like grunt work for them to do for the city, but it's something that would inspire them to be engaged civically, and give them something that they can sincerely put on a resume of what they did and accomplished. And so I think that would be something to keep in mind. The other aspect, I think I told you about this, Logan, was we were looking at doing a youth court. And one of the things about a youth court is it actually, instead of juvenile delinquents, when they go to court, instead of first just going before an actual judge, they go before their peers to be evaluated and give community service and things. It's kind of a step for putting them in the system. And actually, a lot of the cities that we were talking to about getting it started out was really effective, kind of the peer pressure from their peers to say, hey, we want to help you to get
Because my
together.
gut feeling on that was like, yeah, that's gonna cause problems, so it's
Yeah.
surprising.
It was the only reason why we hadn't implemented it was for just staff capacity at that time. But youth courts are, and maybe JJ has some experience with that and has opinions on it. But from what we saw, they were pretty effective actually in keeping juveniles out of the system. So what I'm getting at is you could do something with youth council that's maybe combined with court. There's a lot of directions you can go with it. They're great.
It's all, and these are, the only thing I jotted down, these are the kinds of things I'm not good at organizing, those kinds of things. You know, that's not my toolbox at all. But what I wrote down was real responsibility, with accountability. Whatever it is something that actually gets accomplished, and you account for what you've done as you go along. And it's not just adults doing it.
Yeah.
They actually step up and make it happen.
So they choose a mayor and a council, and then it's more than just like 5 kids. You choose a mayor and a council, and then there's a lot of other kids. And one of the things that we found was a problem was the timing of when you choose the mayor and the council. If you choose it if you choose the new ones at the end of the school year for the upcoming school year, they're more engaged as opposed to the other way around, because then they'll help them in the summer, as opposed to if you choose them at the beginning of the school year, then at the end of the school year, they're checked out by the time summer comes. So there's some cool little lessons we learn doing that, but I'm 100% in support of that. We just need to kind of find the players in the community that can help.
Well, and I think that we need to be realistic too. As we look around this table, all of you serve on multiple boards outside of city council. You have tons and tons of hats. The same 5 people do everything. And we have that same issue in the schools. You know, the kids that serve in student body are the same kids that are the football quarterback and play basketball and run track, you know, and so I think that's going to be a genuine challenge. Is the kids that want to be leaders are already acting as leaders in multiple capacities. And so the real challenge would be to find some kids that have leadership potential but haven't put themselves out there yet.
Yeah, and I haven't done, I mean, I could obviously do a lot more research on this and really dive into what it could look like. I just didn't want to put a ton of effort into it. It's not something we're necessarily interested in looking at.
Well, it sounds like there's enough interest in exploring some ideas to see, is there some place where this can fit, you know? I would say keep exploring and see what.
Maybe we can meet with the high school.
Yeah, I have some contacts at the district office and then the high school specifically, but I haven't met with them yet. I mean, I've talked a little bit to them, and the one person that I talked to had a positive experience in high school where she had been on a youth council and had done some projects. And I mean, one of them that she mentioned was they planted grass at the cemetery and now goes back to the cemetery, and that's what, she helped do, and so that was helpful. So someone that has a good positive experience already with that, and then combining that into we had never had this before, so how is that actually gonna look? And how do we engage kids that maybe aren't engaged already?
Or maybe you mentioned like the student body presidents or whatever with the school. Maybe some of those kids that are already doing that, although you don't want to take the opportunities for doing youth council and limit it to only the student body, but the student body presidency. But I don't know, maybe we feel there's some limitation. Maybe we could incorporate youth council type things with those student body presidents or something. So I think there's a lot of ways that it could go. I think it's just
Well, we're at a unique time politically where the younger generations are wanting to be more involved, and maybe it's for reasons that we wouldn't necessarily agree with, but still, I think that giving them enough means to be involved is important. So,
Depending on who the new business teacher is at the high school, that I think your future business leaders in America are looking for exactly this type of thing for their portfolio.
That's what that's.
Well, Stern Scar with like the Easter egg hunt, with the
Right.
kid stuff at the 4th of July, with
For
the
sure,
fall
kids that are in
festival
honor
stuff.
society, some of those kids tend to not be the ones that are involved in everything else,
Right.
and they would be great on this, so. Yeah, those are some things.
Well, I'll keep talking to people and develop it a little bit more.
Okay, any other comments on it? Wellness Center, who's taking
So
the
Kim and
ball?
I are kind of tag teaming. I'm gonna kind of talk about it, the overview of what we've been doing, and then Kim will kind of walk us through the financial options of how to approach it. So I've been getting potential other estimates, and one I've only got one other back so far, but I'm waiting on about 3 others to get to me. This for the sprinkler system. Yeah. The other one did come in less, but we may potentially, remember how in the original estimate that we got, it was like 300,000 for the sprinkler system, and if we needed a new alarm system, it would be another like 80,000 plus another, who knows, maybe up to 100,000 for drywall work or something. But long story short, even though this one came in less, I was talking to the fire marshal today, actually, and he was saying there is a potential based on the age that we would need to update the alarm system to work in conjunction with the sprinkler system. So keep that in mind. So we're probably still looking around 300,000, given the high and the low bid that I've got. There was a couple other points with it. Oh, here I put my notes. Sorry, I'm managing 2 computers, so I wouldn't forget everything. Oh yes. So the fire marshal said that when if the council decides to move forward now or even later, what you should do is when you go for the bid, you don't give a ton of detail in the request for proposal. He says simply make it state that it must meet state code and inspected by the fire marshal's office. And the only thing he said to really explicitly specify is whether or not the type of sprinkler head we need. So for example, in the gymnasium, we would need ones that point upward, and then he said there's certain kinds that are like concealed sprinklers that cost way more. He said, so he gave me some cost effective recommendations because he was actually in that business before he became the deputy fire marshal. He did say that the costs would be depending on time. If we're 5 years out from expanding the rec center, the wellness center, or if we're 10 years out, but he said either way the cost would be a lot less if you did it in conjunction with an addition, as opposed to retrofitting, then doing an addition and have to retrofit the 2 systems together. He did say it would come at a lesser cost, so that's one thing to consider, even though it's kind of, we don't know. We are doing the Parks and Rec master plan this year. I wish we had that. I wish we were a year ahead, if that makes sense.
so that that could tell us about what our estimation is on how far out we are. I mean, it could be 5 years, it could be 10 years. Right now, it's just kind of what's the temperature, what do you think, but hopefully we'll have a better gauge on that in the next few months. Yeah, and then he just gave me pointers on just when we get estimates and bids to.
So my concern with, sprinkler heads, and maybe this is something that they've already figured out, but the wellness center walls were in the gym were very poorly constructed, you know, the cheapest materials possible, holes all the time because kids would purposely throw their balls as hard
On the
as
outer wall? Like
Yeah.
a hole you can see inside?
No, on the inside.
Oh,
And I perceive sprinkler heads, even though they're high up, being another target that people would be aiming for. So we need to know that they can withstand that.
that's why he made recommendations to
Okay.
me on how they should be positioned
Okay,
and protected.
okay, perfect.
He said, otherwise you have to go for these concealed ones, which are, he said, significantly more. So he said, yeah, in the gymnasium, because the basketball is volleyball,
Okay,
you want them to point up, and from what I understand, they probably have some sort of.
so that's what he was explaining to you. That's
Yeah.
perfect,
And he
yeah.
said only to do that in unfinished areas. So for example, the gymnasium, I think it's just metal roof, right? And so that would be considered an unfinished.
Okay.
But where there's drywall, you would need the kind of the recessed,
Mhm.
recessed sprinklers and everything pointing downward so they don't get the wood and the drywall.
Okay.
Did that kind of get at what you were
Mhm.
talking about? Okay. So yeah, that's kind of the short and skinny of it. I think before turning it over to Kim, I think the overarching perspective that I would say, oh, that was the other thing, actually, one other thing. So I also met with I haven't met, I'm setting up a meeting to meet with the school superintendent and someone that we just hired as well over the operations to discuss, because when I was looking into this, if we need to temporarily use like school facilities and everything, I saw that our recreation agreement or our facilities agreement that we already have with the school actually just ended in June. And so we need to renew that. And so maybe we may talk with them about, scheduling and facility usage in other meetings that we have.
Maintenance.
We'll say that.
Maintenance.
Yeah, right, exactly. And so, so that's one thing to consider. I think, and what I was going to say before I remember the school district part was, we have the funding to do this, right? And this is kind of leading up to what Kim's going to walk you through. We have the funding to do it now, but the question is, do you want to do all the funding or spend all the money for the sprinklers plus all the capital things that you wanted to do? Do you want to just do the sprinklers, wait a year to do all the other capital things? Or do you want to even temporarily use facilities with the school, wait till we get the Parks and Recreation master plan to give us an idea how far out we are? Are we 5 years, 10 years, 15 years out from expansion on the rec center based on the consultant's recommendations? So there's a few things to evaluate. Personally, I would say it's worth waiting a few months and just temporarily renting facilities or
What would we, like, where, I don't think we have an event where we would need to rent a facility.
or potentially with like volleyball.
I don't think I don't know. I have a hard time thinking if we have events that are really open to women.
Yeah, I think.
I don't go often, but
We do.
But I think.
like what though? Like what are,
The volleyball, the tournaments.
Yeah, it's the
It's probably the
tournaments.
biggest.
Yeah.
So not when locals are playing necessarily, but when we're doing like the wrestling tournament, oh my goodness.
so maybe we split it up, do it in 2 days or something. I feel like there's other options versus, I don't know, that's just me.
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right, and that's actually what I'm trying to say is we need to let's look at all the options, let's look at what our real capacities are, and I can get kind of spectator and participant numbers from David and walk through our different programs and get a better sense of that as well.
What's the number again?
250.
299.
Oh, it's 299
for the whole building.
Oh,
Not just the gymnasium, it's for the whole building.
And
Yes,
even just youth basketball, I guarantee, just a regular, when they've got games going on both sides.
And I've been,
you've
and
got
there's
more than
not.
that.
I mean, I don't even say
It's
over
all
100.
about the tournaments this.
We have way more than that involved.
Summer there was.
volleyball was
And the-
significant. That's actually what first caught my attention, because it was kind of still COVID time, and that's what made us say, well, what are our occupancies based on COVID? And we were just thinking the COVID situation at that time, but, anyways.
There's no way that we'd be able to do the tree for all under.
But the tree for all, you don't have that many people all at once unless you have those performances there.
So
there's pieces to it that I mean, I don't know, I could be wrong, but I just don't feel,
What it looks like in here.
yeah, I don't know what 300 people actually looks like in that.
So here's my perspective. Obviously, I'm new here, but, in other cities that I've worked for and lived in, that were large cities, didn't have recreation centers, and we had contracts with the schools. It did take coordination. I think it's worth it, at least to temporarily contract with the schools on coordinating facilities, to see kind of where the Parks and Recreation Master Plan, what the recommendations come out of that, with the wellness center specifically, as among other things. And then from there, making the decision whether or not to pull the trigger on putting sprinkler systems. At most, that would be probably a year out. I'm hoping within the next 6 to 9 months, we can have something put together as far as a master plan. But like I said, we do have the funding to do it now. It's just a matter of how you want to implement the funding. Do you want to wait a little bit? Do you want to just wait indefinitely until we expand the wellness center? There's a variety of options.
I know it's always a hard thing of when,
Right.
it's like with Blanding Elementary, that's the next school that's gonna get remodeled, but when?
Right.
And that's what we don't know.
And that's why I'm hamming up the master plan, is because that will give us a better sense.
It'll give us an idea, but we still, I don't know, we'll be ready to say, yes, we're gonna do that in 5 years.
Right.
You know what I mean? But I also think that it's insane to spend $400,000 on sprinklers that's gonna need to be replicated 5 years from now.
Right. And that's where the hard balance is.
But it's also insane to have this awesome facility that we can't even use to capacity.
Can I make a comment?
We can use it for almost everything.
And let me, I'll pull it.
There's a few singular events
If,
that are problematic.
to expand that wellness center, you're gonna use a large majority of your reserves to do that. We're looking at a number of $400,000 for the sprinkler, and these are estimates based off of just without any documentation or visits or anything, any input from us about, can you put this sprinkler there, or does it have to be there? I think just as I've looked at this and thought about it over the last couple of months and thought what's gonna be the best deal is, I still believe before you can really make a decision, you really need to know, what is that cost really gonna be? They got a bid today that he thinks is really low, but what if right now we're trying to make a decision based on $400,000, and it could be 200, it could be 800. We don't really know until somebody gets in there and starts digging around, but, and if we're looking at 9 months for this recreation master plan, that's 9 months.
So the discussion that we had at the last meeting was that we wanted to look at this based with real numbers.
Well, yes, we're getting real numbers as far as estimates concerned, but we can't get like hard, fast
You can't get an
proposals until we do an RFP. And that's what Kim's getting
Yeah,
at,
I
is
think that's what we need.
we could just do an official RFP, but I want to kind of get the estimates from these guys anyways, so they get a sense of what the situation is and everything. And then we can do that, and I'll have a couple more in the next, hopefully by next week. Then we can do an official RFP. If they can actually come and inspect the facility, know what our requirements are. You have to have this inspected by the state fire marshal's office, et cetera. And then we'll get some real hard numbers like what you're saying. And I think that, again, I'm putting words in your mouth, but I think that's what you're getting at.
Yeah.
Well, I'd also like to see numbers from events. I mean, obviously we can't figure a number for a Christmas event now, because, you know, I mean, unless we want to just have a random Christmas event.
It's in July.
Those are hard, but I would like to know like what it actually looks like at a basketball, like how many people are we?
I think we sat down and we were just kind of trying to do that, just visiting, well, if you got this many players, if you got this many parents, if you got, you know, and we were looking at, you know, when we were getting close to 300 on some of those things, just, it doesn't seem like there's that many in there, but you start adding this many.
I was thinking that too.
Well, I was told that the Sportsman's Banquet only sold 250 tickets, is what I was told.
Everybody I talked
But then they
to
have all
counted
the
exactly
vendors, too.
299 people.
That's what
I was
They said 299.
Right. So I want, I
Everybody got
mean,
the same count, so.
we need to make,
Hey, it's
this-
the
I think we need to see, I think we need to have some good numbers, even if we're guessing.
Yeah.
But we need to have those numbers, and we need to have
have.
estimate numbers, yeah.
So Logan, what we can do is we'll sit down with staff and we can come up with our best estimates on what the numbers are on some of those events.
I mean, if you look at
But I would agree with Kim. that we're-
basketball, you look at the Sportsman's Banquet probably, I mean, you can't know for sure, we're not gonna get an exact number.
But I think it would be nice to know,
Volleyball.
we have 10, I'm just making something up, we have 10 events a year that we know is gonna push the 300 mark. And then that gives you a better gauge of, is it worth it for us to make this investment based on 10 events? Or is it 20 events, or maybe it's only 5 events that we build and push it, but I think that's
That's
valid.
That's what kind of getting to that point in the last discussion was, you know, what's your return on investment? It's 5 events. So what, you know, we just won't have those 5, or, you know, or you figure out a different way to do them.
Right.
It's 20, that's a whole different discussion, you know, and so, yeah, there's a lot of information to be gathered, so we can be better informed of where to move with this.
The challenge for me is that I think the rec center should be for rec. And that's, like, we've been able to use it for other things because it's a big facility. But I think that we really, if
Well, then some of them got build a bigger facility.
we can't
There's
have,
nothing in town that.
if we can't have the events, you know, in there, like the rec, I think that's crucial.
That's where
But
the
like the
problem is.
sportsman, I mean, that brings a lot of people, that brings a lot of revenue to the city, that sportsman fish and wildlife, but lots. And so there's nowhere else to hold it. So if we say, sorry, you can no longer use our facility, guess what? They'll find somewhere else to do it. And then all the businesses in town are benefiting lose. So
How
I'm
many
gonna need-
sportsman banquet do you need to recoup $400,000?
I look at this and I go, what if there's a fire and there were 10 people in there? For me, it doesn't necessarily matter if 299 or 10. If I can't believe there's not a sprinkler system in there. I did have the former council member who was on council when this facility was built. He said, Cheryl, we had money to build this facility. In fact, we had excess money to build this facility. It did not come up in our discussion.
Yeah, and
That's what I was told.
I had
So-
a former tell me the same thing, that they didn't even know it was built.
They didn't know that, it wasn't part of their, they didn't say, yeah, let's not build it because it's a lot of
Having
money.
excess money was because originally the
They were gonna
CID
expand.
granted us an enormous amount of money that we could never have repaid. And we went back and said, we can't repay that much money, and we gotta have in grant, what can you do? Then we had a much lower number,
What are our ongoing costs?
and you'd have to get it in under that budget, or you didn't build it.
I just think of it as, to me, there should be a sprinkling system in a facility of that type, whether it's 50 people or 400 people. But I also have people approach me and say, hey, you need to look at expanding the facility at the same time, because it's gonna save you a lot of money to do it now rather than later, or not a lot, but it's gonna save you money to do it now rather than when you
Actually,
expand.
during the 4th of July, I had some people that I never even met before mention during the 4th of July event. But I think for sake of time,
So you need the direction from the council to be able to move forward with an RFP.
well, I mean, it would be nice to just get consent, right? And this is a discussion item anyways. Yeah, we're kind of looking for consent. Do you even want us to look forward to RFP? But I guess before we look for that, I think it's good for Kim to walk through kind of these numbers and if we did this, then this, and if we did this, then this. I just want to
Well, we
you
can
guys-
see them, they're right
Well,
here.
this
in
is-
front of us.
I think they're very self-explanatory. and then
On this
we have
specific
the
question
savings
though,
and
if we've
stuff.
got numbers, if people have thrown out some just broad estimates and we know they're not being held to that. And some of them are way lower than 400, some might be more. That's entertaining enough to me to say, let's get a hard number. Let's do an RFP, see what the real number is. And maybe some of the other estimates come in and they're all way high, and then we revisit that discussion.
I think talking to the schools, possibly.
Yeah,
So we can
Keep the options open.
I definitely think that's
One thing with the
necessary.
school, I mean, I don't wanna go to the school being like, we need you. Like, I don't wanna be I don't wanna be that person in the conversation.
I think,
Because I think we have a lot to offer even as the facility is, I think we have a lot to offer as a city, with the baseball fields. I feel like we need to be on level playing ground versus like, this is what we're looking at doing. We need to be able to use your facilities because then that gives them a little bit more of an advantage. Not saying that it would, but
yeah, my intent in the conversations is that we both have needs that we can help each other fulfill. And this is more of a plan B, a backup or a temporary, and just kind of
Do
see.
you know
where
off
we're
the
at.
top of your head, what's the size of our facility versus the high school gym?
So our facility is about 100 and just the gymnasium portion. I don't know the high school, but our gymnasium portion is 141.3 feet by 104 point,
And it fits 2 basketball courts,
2 full size.
so it's obviously probably about double the size of the high school gym.
minus
I
seating.
don't think it's quite double, I think
Yeah.
it's a little bit.
For a banquet,
We don't have.
so.
The high school will have all those bleachers and
Yeah,
stuff that we don't have, so it could be really close to the.
But you were pretty close.
The bleachers, if it's
So-
close.
The state fire marshal told me like if there were just like a gathering, it wasn't like tables and banquet, confusing. It was definitely over 1,000. I want to say up to, he said up to 1,400 is what he told me. And this was my initial conversation a few weeks ago. Could fit in there if we had a sprinkler system in there. So for example, if there was like an assembly, that's more. Now a banquet would probably be somewhere more like 700 or 800 based on tables and things like that.
I just was wondering if the gym could be used for, if the reason we're using our facilities because the high school.
The high
gym
school,
can't
we used to
be
use the high school for a sportsman's banquet.
They did.
Used to be there. Then we moved over to.
And that's kind of my point is I know it's been nice to have it there, but if based on budgetarily, I just want it to be in the back of your minds that if you really feel like we need to wait budgetarily or we can't do this right now, that I can talk to the school, there are options, it's not end of the world. I think we can create partnerships and do those sorts of things. But if you feel that the funding's there and you want to do that, then that's also an option. I just want you to be.
You do still need to talk with the school. We need to have an RFP in place. They use our baseball fields and honestly, it has been pretty one-sided for a number of years because we haven't been using their facilities. And, well, the one facility that we were using was their baseball fields and they weren't maintaining it. So the kids are sitting in goat heads.
Yeah, I've heard that.
You know, And so we're maintaining ours and they're not. And so we do need to,
Equal footing, right?
yes, we need to be, like,
Well, there needs to be an understanding of what it is. We've had the high school actually come and complain to us about the conditions on their facility.
Yeah.
That's yours.
Right.
so,
Have to remind them.
Well, and I think that I definitely want to approach the discussion as let's make this a true partnership where we're both committed to things, and we understand what the offering is because, similar to us, there's maintenance costs and things like that. And so for them, they're going to be thinking the same thing. Well, if you need to use our gym, there's maintenance and staff costs related to that. So, I want to be able to have a discussion with them that says, look, I understand you guys have similar, things in the back of your mind about your facilities as we do. So let's talk about that. And I think it's actually a good opportunity to, it's interesting
Keep their
timing.
options open
Yeah.
and keep the relationship good.
So what I'm hearing from the council is there's consent to move forward with an RFP. If otherwise, tell me. I think they'll, and then go ahead and continue moving forward, talking to the school. The other thing that I'm curious about is, say all bids come in, we got real good hard numbers at the RFP, and we're looking at 400,000 for the whole kit and caboodle to be done. Of these options, is there any which way, I'm curious, individually and collectively that you?
My question is, we've talked some of these to death for years, over years. Are those hard numbers yet?
No.
For the-
Those are
No,
just the,
those still are.
those are the budgeted.
Yeah, I'm not willing to make any decision until I have a real number.
Because-
Like,
Yeah,
I mean, I get these and we've kind of come up with these several times, but
Those are
I could
numbers.
write numbers down
But
and it'd
no.
be just as much as.
But the pavilion and the shade structure, we did get updated numbers and they're significantly more than that.
But months ago even, so we're even months ago now, and maybe
Yeah,
even more now,
Those
so.
were budgeted based on numbers that we got back in April, March time.
So let me, I guess, translate maybe this concern, so I make sure that I'm understanding. Move forward with RFP with the sprinkler, see where that sits, and then do you want us to move forward with RFPs on these other items? That's more what I'm getting at. Or do you want to wait on moving forward with these RFP items? I'm just trying to get a sense of how you, today, what are your thoughts? I'm hearing, let's just one step at a time, RFP on the sprinkler system, see where that comes in. If it's reasonable, then potentially we could RFP these other things or decide to wait for them.
What you're hearing from me is that these things have been on, supposed to be completed for 2 years.
Yeah.
And we've been having the same discussion, so this is not your fault, but let's get them done.
I want to have real numbers on those things.
I mean, why have we not done RFPs on the pavilion and the shade structure?
So do you want us to do RFPs on all of these things? I guess that's what I'm asking.
But it was approved in the budget, so why isn't the RFP done?
Well, the budget-
These items were approved. Sorry,
We just started the new fiscal year, so we couldn't have put out an RFP yet on that.
Can you tell me, so the capital project savings, that number that we have up top,
Yes.
1 million, whatever, is that our entire capital project savings or just recreation?
No,
savings?
that's the entire.
Okay,
The recreation is 138,492, and the wellness center is the 400.
okay, that's why you have it broken out like that, that's what recreation, okay, so, yeah, potentially we'd be looking at spending quite a bit of our capital.
But
But you do all of it and you have the 400,000. You can see if you did everything, you're looking at a total cost of 632, leaving you with just one little over 1 million.
But to be clear, this is our capital projects fund, this is not our general fund.
Yeah, I know.
So, just, yeah. So we still will be
So
fine.
that's a big chunk, and ultimately that's up to you to prioritize what you want to do, or you can do them all. But we
Did you
don't
wanna-
have hard figures on those items on there because we've kind of been waiting to resolve this sprinkler thing.
Yeah, so really my recommendation is, let's do the RFP on the sprinklers, let's get some hard numbers on that, and then that will give you a sense of these other things that you've been wanting to do, haven't had a chance to do, or hasn't been done, we should say.
But then we're still at a point where it's like, well, what if these ones maybe are this much? I just
Well,
don't
but
feel
that's what I was
like I
gonna
can
say,
make a
then
decision
step
without
2 is
all.
getting the RFP done on those. And maybe you just want the pavilion RFP done, or just the shade structure RFP, or maybe you want both after seeing the hard numbers on the sprinkler system, and we say, oh yeah, we're good, we can do the RFP on all those things still.
Is there a reason you can't put the RFP out on all of them?
Yeah, we could do all of them right now, but they have to be separate ones each.
No, I
We're almost
understand
done
that, but is
with
there a
the,
reason you can't do an RFP for all 3 of those items?
yes, we can, and we've already kind of started working on some of those, but then the sprinkler system thing came to fruition, and so.
And maybe that's the best solution is to get the hard numbers on
Get the
there.
hard numbers and we can say, okay, we can do 2 of these things, or
My only concern with putting out an RFP is that then if we say, okay, we can't afford these, then do people feel burned by
Yeah, that's what I'm worried about.
giving us a request for proposal, and then when we finally are ready for it, they're like, no.
That's the exact.
That's when we
That's
don't
my-
do business with them. I mean, we have to know what the numbers are to know if we can move forward or not. And that shade struck, I mean, I realize the pavilion got put on hold because of COVID, but I don't know, it's just, there's no way for us to make a decision on this without knowing the numbers. And if we can't know the numbers without an RFP, then we have to do RFP.
Well, so I have no problem doing RFPs on all these if that's what you want, but that's why I was getting estimates from each of them before officially
But
going
that
to.
seems like a waste of time. I'm sorry, I'm just, again, I just brought new frustration the last time we discussed it, and now I'm frustrated again, but you're wasting time getting estimates when just get an RFP, just put out an RFP.
These people might not even bid on an RFP,
Yeah,
right? That's part of the problem
So
too.
then if they won't do it, we can't have them do it anyways, you know?
Right.
Like, it's like,
Don't get
all right,
estimates.
don't give us an RFP, we won't use
An
it.
RFP is basically just like an estimate, other than who, we agree that we're gonna move forward if it works. So why get estimates if we need an RFP anyway? I guess that's the part I don't understand.
Part of an RFP, I mean, you can always pull out of an RFP, and getting back to what Councilmember Perkins was saying. By putting out an RFP, you're saying, we have the funding to do this, and we're gonna select someone for this job.
Right.
And the point of estimates is saying, we don't know what this is gonna cost. We don't know if we have all the money. We're gonna get the estimates first, see if we have relative what the estimate is before we put out an RFP and commit, because we don't want to burn bridges. And that's what the typical process of doing that is, especially because, I mean, we are 5 to 6 hours away from a lot of those that would be bidding on these projects, and so we want to be
So this
sensitive.
pavilion, was it say 56,000? Was that an actual estimate a few months ago?
It was 55 something or
Well, that was an
other change.
actual estimate, how many months ago?
So we budgeted, yeah,
April.
56,
It was
this is a round number.
So, I mean, it should still be, and I could be wrong because the way costs have been going up. But these numbers were based on actual estimates that we got recently since I.
So the pavilion, the shade structure, I think is pretty close.
And we think-
It's really the sprinklers that we're not quite.
Well,
sure
and I've
about.
got a couple estimates, and I'll see in the next week or so, getting a couple more. But from what I'm looking at, I think we're still gonna land probably around 300,000 on the low end.
And you'll recall that with the pavilion, we initially thought it'd be 35.
Yeah.
And now we're almost double,
Right.
so.
And those numbers that we got for those bids that we used to budget that, you remember we had a couple of 3 different bids. They're probably outdated by now anyway. So the numbers are gonna change, and so you're gonna have to request that bid to be updated anyway.
Right.
But it should be dramatically.
So are they gonna go up or are they gonna stay close? We don't know until you have to call it then.
But at least what we have budgeted was based off of a real estimates of what the needs are. And that's why we wanted to put these options is, hey, we've gotten estimates on all of these things. Here's approximately what would it cost. And option one, if
So
you
we
do-
got the estimate side, and they're a little dated, the construction costs are going up, but in some ways they're coming down again. It seems to be stabilizing, so I like the idea of getting, I mean, I do this, I talk to a builder and say, give me a really round number to do this, and if they say 80,000, and I'm thinking, well, I can only spend 50, okay, then I won't ask them for a quote. You know, if I ask them for a quote and they come in with 80 and I go, oh, well, I don't want you to do it, I wasted their time, and they're not gonna be my friend in the future. I will not be their
And
customer.
they probably won't bid for these in the
Right,
future.
and so that's what we've done, and I think we have these here that are current enough. Yeah, could they change quite a bit? I would say you do an RFP on them, if the feeling of council is that we want them all to happen, then we get RFP. Then we get a real number.
So are we committing ourselves if we do an RFP on the sprinkler system?
Philosophically, kind of you are.
Yeah. You can always back out, but it's kind of like the example the mayor just gave. And
The builder will never talk to
So we're
you
gonna-
again. if I-
yeah.
And one
A
thing,
local
actually,
maybe.
one thing that the deputy fire marshal pointed out to me, he said, especially with the distance that we are, if in an official bid, they may not apply for the RFP at all. And he said, in the higher estimates, Some will inflate their estimate because they're saying, we really don't want to do this job, or we need, you know, to, or that they need to compensate for their distance or the cost. So let me get these other couple estimates. I hear the council loud and clear about, well, at least I think, I don't know, it's kind of swayed the other way now, but I think I'm hearing you loud and clear. Let's do an RFP for at least the sprinkler system, see where that comes in
So
at.
who did you hear that from?
So
I didn't hear anyone, so you just said do an RFP for the sprinkler system, when Mayor just said, let's do an RFP for all three of these things. So where did you hear, let's not do it for everything?
I didn't say it, I heard let's not do it, I said I heard let's do it for the sprinkler system, and I'm kind of hearing mixed things about everything else.
Okay,
That's
gotcha.
what I was getting at.
I think and I've gone back to this several times, I think we're back to this like capital projects list of like, what are we gonna do? When are we gonna do
Right.
it? What's it gonna cost? So we're back to this, and that's where my frustration is, again, is that we're back here again, because we haven't done anything, we kind of know the numbers. We have talked about the master plan, but we haven't done it. And I get that we're in the year, but like, this is probably where my frustration is coming from, is that we're just back to this again, but we've added the sprinklers onto that list now, is what I feel like.
And I guess for me, if we would have, I mean, the pavilion and the shade structure were approved. The council has approved those items. So if you would have come to us with an RFP for those two items, it makes dealing with the sprinkler system, I think, a little easier to determine where we're at. So it just feels for us, and again, this is not all your fault, because this has been going on for several years, but it feels for us like we keep talking about these things and they don't ever get done because we're still talking about them.
So
I'd like to see an RFP for these things.
you
because
want to
they
do
were
it
already
regardless of whether we use sprinklers or not?
Right.
That's
So those two things, yeah, we decided.
I guess
still wanna
my
do it.
point was that we had approved it, and I realized the sprinklers came up shortly after that, but they're approved by council, so the RFP should have already been put out.
No, because we had to wait for the new fiscal year.
To even put out an RFP?
Yes. And so that's what the question tonight is.
Well, I don't
Is
know if
now-
that's-
Now that we know we have this, the sprinkler system is a new thing that's come on, so it's kind of changed our budgetary position.
Mhm.
So the real question is, do you want us to still move forward with these other items and the sprinkler? Do you want us to do the sprinkler and one of the items, just the sprinkler, or all these items and not the sprinkler? That's what we're asking. So I'm hearing RFP for sure for sprinkler, but it's still kind of getting mixed from everything else. That recreation plan, as we've talked about before, we really have to do that for the match grant funding. And we're getting close to having a first draft for that, and then we're going to start working on these drafts for the other two, but then the sprinkler system came up. So I guess I don't know.
Originally, how were we, taking the sprinkling system out of that, how were we intending to pay for the pavilion and the shade structure? Out of capital projects or out of savings? Okay, so really something that we're looking at is potentially decimating the wellness center savings to pay for sprinkling systems.
Yes,
It's essentially what that looks like.
so we can take a portion out of the wellness center and a portion out of that 1.1. We could do it, we could split it so that we left something in the wellness center. But, I mean, we can do that, that's not a problem.
And we can put together a much more complex, this is kind of the synopsis, but we looked at that, like, do we split it from this fund and this fund? Do we take it all out of this one fund? So
I think it is amazing that we've been as fiscally responsible as we are, that we're not looking at debt for these things that we need.
Right.
Right.
So,
It's just, do we really spend that much of our money all on recreation?
that's the bottom line, I guess. And one thing I might mention is on that pavilion and that shade structure, I think we can just contact those same vendors again and get an updated bid on that. I don't know.
So you have to put out an RFP then?
no, you can get estimates prior to and then officially put up to RFP.
Oh, I
And
thought you were
usually-
saying just go with them, but we have to do an RFP, right? Just based on policy? Or do we not?
Yeah, we do need to go for RFP based on that.
You know,
So my take is this, I think I have an understanding of what the sprinklers are gonna cost, and it sounds like you're getting estimates, you've already done that. I would like to see an RFP on the pavilion and shade structure, and then we make a decision on the sprinklers. That's where I am.
And that's where I'm looking for consent from the rest of the council.
Right.
I haven't heard that.
If you get an updated bid, is that gonna be essentially the same as what the RFP is?
Yes, in my opinion. It's gonna give us a ballpark of what an RFP would come in at. And that's what Kim was saying, let's see, we need an updated estimate from that side.
I mean, I think that if we get an updated estimate, then that's gonna give us a fairly good idea. And if we put it out to RFP, maybe chances are good we get something cheaper. I don't know. Like, that's the best case, I guess, but,
But we have looked at multiple, I mean,
you know.
and Councilman Monson, you talked to others to try and get estimates, and we're coming in about the same.
Did we ever explore the grant for those shade structures that I forwarded to you and to the public?
Yes, I remember.
Yeah. Oh, but no, that was for.
No,
the
no,
dirt.
I'm thinking about the dirt one. I can't remember, I know David was looking at
It was through this company that we got that bid from.
I'd have to ask
I
him.
can't remember what, anyway.
That's a good.
But yeah,
That's
that's
just,
another avenue that we can go to, so. I'm sensing hesitation on going
The
RFP.
reason I wanna do an RFP is
It's so much money.
we talked about this 6 months ago and we got estimates, and then we talked about it a year before that and we got estimates, and now we're gonna go back and get new estimates on the estimates, and the council has approved the pavilion and the shade structure, so it feels to me like they need to get an RFP.
Well, do you wanna do them regardless, Cheryl? Regardless of whether we
I
get
do,
sprinklers or not?
yes.
And that's the real question, because if everybody wants to do all those projects, regardless of the sprinklers, then we should go get RFPs.
I don't
If
wanna
you're
do
hesitant on doing the other projects,
We can do the other two.
You're hesitant on doing those other projects until we find hard numbers for the sprinklers, then I would wait on RFPs and just get updated estimates on it. So that's, I guess.
That's a great question, though. Yes, I think regardless of the sprinklers, I would do those things anyway, other than I wouldn't do the master plan.
Even
And the
though we
master
lose that
plan was-
funding for the trails and retail.
And the master plan wasn't this much, right? Like, I feel like we talked about like 30,000. Like, I don't.
No, we talked about 50.
That was the budgeted amount though, right?
Does that count as our match? We talked about that being our match for that.
That is our match, the 50 is our
Okay,
match.
then that's probably okay.
Yeah.
That's not an actual dollar amount though, it's in-kind match for.
No, that's our actual dollar amount that we,
With,
but to your point, I said that
Do we need those?
for our size of city, that it could potentially come in less, but that having done master plan, recreation master plan, 50 is about what we need at least to have a good base for discussion.
So I'm just listening and I can tell this is a really hard decision on what should we do, what's the best answer. And even though we might ruffle some feathers doing it, and you seem to be leaning that you really want to do these things, do the RFP. I mean, you might hurt somebody's feelings if you decide not to do it, but you're not gonna get real answers until you do.
And my intent is to do it, so I'm okay with that. My intent is to do it as well, I think, so.
Just my 2 cents, because you're struggling.
My only disclaimer on that is, as the budget officer, I have hesitation spending all that money all in 1 year and depleting our capital projects that much. So I have no problem doing all those projects and getting the RFPs, I agree. But I have
The
budgetarily,
pavilion was approved 2 years ago.
I agree, but we're in the budget situation that we are in now, and that's what I have to evaluate. So, and that's where my recommendation.
And I do agree, I agree with you on that, but you can't make a decision unless you have real numbers. Anyway, yeah.
So I think the idea floating around here is RFP, the whole collection, and then you know where we go. That's where Logan and Cheryl are for sure. Kelvin.
Well, if you guys don't come with the updated bids or you come in close with it, I'm okay with that too, but.
I feel really comfortable.
I feel in this sprinkler system by RFP, we're basically gonna commit to doing it. So there's 400 grand out of your, the budget.
Yep, Merry Christmas.
And,
And actually, I'm just,
and I on those others, you know, we're in good shape because we've been fiscally conservative. And on those others, you know, I had heartburn with the shade structure because how much the installation was on it, if I remember right. It was tremendous. But, so when, how much, one of them was $100,000 to put that in? It was some crazy number.
I still, I mean, with the shade structures, I'm not convinced that that's the best design either, you know? Which brings us back to where are we going now? Like, which direction are we going?
Well, but an RFP is open, it's open. It's not a quote, it's not a bid for a specific request for making. It's saying, we need shade over these, how would you solve that problem for us? And you might have somebody come in with a lot lower costing or somebody with a way higher costing.
I
And
feel
you
like
pick
that.
from those which one you want. That's the nature of a request for proposal. It's not an apples and apples thing. It's apples and oranges and peaches and bananas. And you get to pick which fruit you like out of the collection.
I feel like that high installation cost was you're
We don't
far
wanna
away
do
from
it.
where we are.
We don't want to come down to that.
Yeah, I do too.
So the only other thing from the back end that I would ask the council to take into consideration, RFPs and answering questions and phone calls and going through them and writing them takes a lot of time. In addition to the concessionaire RFP that we would be doing, that would be 5 RFPs. That's a lot of staff time, and I am genuinely concerned about that and managing that. So that's the other thing. That's why I also would lean more toward if we can just get updated estimates on other things for now, and then we can time out RFPs so that they're not all stacked together. I know that's not what you want to hear, but I'm just really genuinely concerned about staff time and being able to do our daily work with managing that many RFPs all at once. 1 or 2 RFPs is quite a load, but 5 is, that gives me a lot of,
Well, and that's a valid point. And that's a hard thing to say.
yeah.
Because people want to move. And it's so, I mean, you're given a hard answer, but you have to evaluate this, you know. But still, it seems to me like the council saying, move forward with getting them. Maybe they will be spaced out over a little more time, but move forward with getting them.
The reason why I mention that is because what I'm hearing is move forward with getting them so we can have all the numbers all at once and make a decision on everything all at once. And if it is spacing them out, then you can't really use those hard numbers to make a decision on the sprinklers based on these other things. But if we got estimates, we could.
So you come around to Robert's point, is basically your committee, you're saying, we're doing this problem.
Right, yeah.
And that's generally what an RFP means.
And
I'm not requesting RFP on the sprinklers. I actually need to, the more I hear what these guys are
that's
saying
what I
about
would
the
say.
sprinklers, I don't know, maybe I need to put some more thought into the sprinklers. I'm not saying do one on the sprinklers, sorry.
Yeah, I'm good with that too. I'm good to do an RFP and everything about the sprinklers and get estimates on the sprinklers and have some okay numbers, but maybe, I guess, because I'm still not convinced that we've done enough research saying these are the events that we need the sprinklers for. Maybe we have 3 events that we're trying to get this $400,000 sprinkling system for when we can plan the event differently.
Okay, so then,
Point.
go ahead.
Okay, so now there's that idea. So you're kind of thinking, okay,
Yeah,
where,
not the
Robert,
sprinkler
where are you
system
on
yet.
that idea? Get RFPs on those other 2, keep working on estimates and ideas on the sprinklers. Kelly.
Yeah, I mean, that's what.
Sounds good.
Okay, so we kind of have a direction there.
So let's move forward with our shade structure and pavilion RFPs. Well, we already have been starting writing the recreation master plan RFP as well. And then the concessionaire one, we won't put out for another month or 2 anyway, there's no hard pressing on that, so we can stagger that one. And then based on how those come in, and based on the estimates that we get for sprinklers, then you can decide how you want to move forward on sprinklers. That sounds fair? Okay. Yay.
We're not
good
deciding
discussion.
anything, but we're giving you
I'm not saying
direction. We're giving you
That's not-
direction
if
to come back with the hard numbers and go,
Exploring
and pull the plug.
Actually, if I can add one last thing, that's not the direction I expected, but that is the direction that I as well prefer. Because of the high potential cost of the sprinkler system, it's been giving me a bit of anxiety where I think we can move forward on these and we have potential options on what we do with the sprinkler system. Thank you.
Can I just ask, is anyone interested in looking at expanding the wellness center? Looking at funding to expand the wellness center? Is it a discussion we need to have? Only because I've been approached by people from the city telling me you need to do it
Two
now.
grants, sure.
It's raining. I think it's $100.
We'll get a lot more information on that when we get, because you're wanting to say how many events.
Right,
It's just-
yeah, I mean, if it makes
That's-
sense,
that's-
yes, I feel like
That's
that's
a huge
worth the
part of
plan.
this question.
Yes.
Well, and I'm wondering if our barcode thing can tell us, not just events, we can extrapolate and estimate on events.
It's not gonna tell you events because those people all just go straight in the door.
That's what I was gonna say, so we can estimate on events, but then also look at our daily numbers as well, and maybe how they've increased over time.
Good
I
for that.
wonder if I know that you
Traffic
covered it on time, but if you as the city manager called the SFW and asked them for real numbers of how many are attending that event, that would give us who've attended that event. a good
They
idea
have to know how many
If
tickets
there's
they're
really only
selling.
250 people
And how many
in there,
vendors.
it
Someone
feels
sent me that.
packed. It feels like a lot of people. So
Yeah, I
Way more
agree.
than that, but
it
every
seems like
official count.
500 to me, but
Are there any other non-city sponsored events that are held there that I need to be aware of besides this
Isn't-
one?
Part of this,
the wrestling.
yeah, see, and part of this discussion is these events are in competition with the purpose of the facility, which is rec. And that's been a discussion that we've had over time too, these events deny the public the general use of the facility that was constructed for. So we've questioned some of these events all along, and there's a balance, and we try to balance that, so that's part of this discussion is,
Oh, and just side note, again, I'm not gonna say it publicly, but I have spoken to another organization in town who would be interested in the coming years as we get our master plan, potentially partnering on the expansion of the wellness. So that's something to keep in mind too.
Okay, are we moving on?
Sounds good.
Visitor center guide contract. Oh, that's.
Okay, yeah, so this is just, the guide contract. He's looking to eventually build his own facility. So he was hesitant about expanding or about extending the contract for the next season. And I just said, let's just put a clause in there as long as you give us 30 days notice. That way, if your facility's not anywhere close, then you can just keep using the visitor center. So outside of that, we had Kendall review it and he's comfortable, our city attorney's comfortable with everything in there. It's pretty simple and straightforward. And if you approve this tonight, then I can sign it and you can sign it.
So you looked at it, Cal looked at it, Josh is comfortable with
Yeah,
it.
Pratt drafted it initially, so.
Any
I
questions
think
on
it's
it?
exciting to see how it goes.
Okay, I'll accept the motion.
I will make a motion that we approve the visitor center commercial lease and operating agreement.
Second. Perkins and Turk, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So everybody, airport lease agreement,
Let's do this really
is
fast.
this just renewal of what we've
Yes,
basically had forever?
yes. This is, what we did is just kind of restructured it so that it was easier to read and kind of followed what the standard was. But there was just 3 things that we added that weren't in the previous one.
And those are the bold. No, let's see, yeah, because there's one thing that's all. What was the addition or change?
We changed it that it would be renewed every 2 years instead of yearly. And the vehicles needed to be parked outside the hangar area instead of in there around the planes next to the hangars.
Oh,
And we needed to have the hangars inspected before the lease is renewed to make sure that what's in there is what we've been told is in there.
oh,
Because we
Well,
haven't
that
done that
makes
before.
sense.
So.
And so that it's clear that they can't build their own structures and
well,
stuff.
that and change the use.
Yeah, and change
Yes,
the
thank
use. And, you know, it just, kind of clarified what we've been doing, so.
Okay, accept the motion on that.
I'll make the motion, we accept the airport's 10-year lease.
I'll say that.
Nelson and Perkins, any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. So we need a motion to go into closed session.
So I'll make a motion to go into closed session.
You second it?
Perkins, Bowers, all in favor? Okay, good night,